Welcome to the WoW Wings of Wisdom podcast, where curiosity meets inspiration. Brought to you by the Writing and Communications Center WCC at Ashland University.
In each episode, we invite a remarkable guest from our university community to share their journey, explore the power of communication, and unveil the strategies they use to guide students toward growth and success.
Whether you're a learner, an educator, or someone captivated by stories of triumph and discovery in the academic world, you're in the right place. So settle in, open your mind, and prepare to soar on the wings of wisdom.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Wings of Wisdom, WoW podcast, brought to you by the Writing Communications Center. Today we have a huge treat. We have two guests for the first time. And joined with me, our wonderful coach, Destiny Bittinger, who is also a religion major. And Destiny, would you like to introduce our first guest?
All right. So on today's episode of the Wings of Wisdom podcast, we are excited to welcome Dr. Craig Hovey, Professor of Religion at AU. Dr. Hovey's expertise lies in the fields of Christian theology and ethics, political theology, and philosophical theology. As the executive director of the Ashland Center for Nonviolence, he has been instrumental in fostering discussions and understanding around nonviolence and peace. His impressive academic journey includes a PhD in divinity from the University of Cambridge and several other prestigious degrees. Notably, Dr. Hovey is also a recipient of Ashland University's Excellence in Scholarship Award, reflecting his commitment to academic rigor and excellence. Dr. Hovey is the author of 9 books and several journal articles. Dr. Hovey, welcome to the WoW.
Thank you. Happy to be here. And our second guest is Beth Buttil, the Assistant Director of the Ashland Center for Nonviolence, ACN, since 2019. Native of Ashland. Wow. Beth ventured to Northwestern University, where she graduated with a BA in Human Development and Psychological Services. Her journey took her to Princeton, New Jersey for a time before coming back to Ohio in 2011. Beth now lives in Ontario with her husband and 3 children, Jackson, Adeline, and Quinn. In her role at ACN, Beth plays a pivotal part in coordinating events, advising student interns, and upholding the center's mission to promote peace and nonviolence. In addition, she serves as the admin assistant at the WCC, showcasing her versatility and dedication. Beth is an avid reader. I don't know how many books, we'll get to that. Maybe you got to 400 this year, so we'll see. But we're so happy that both of you are here today. What a treat.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start with Dr. Hovey. What brought you to Ashland University?
Well, the job brought me here, brought me to Ohio. So I was living in California after having completed my doctorate at Cambridge. I lived in England for 3 years. And then, but I came here, I was attracted to Ashland and the position in which I could teach theology and ethics, 2 of my areas in my field. Those tend to be separated. And so I was applying to a lot of theology jobs, a lot of ethics jobs. And this one combined them, and I didn't know a lot about the campus when I applied, but I was attracted to that initially.
And you're originally from California,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I'm Southern California.
How did that transition happen? California, England, and then Ashland?
Yeah. Well, England was wonderful. To live there for 3 years. I think the fact that there were a lot more differences, I will say, than I thought there would be. I knew the language would be the same, but as it turns out, there are a lot of differences within the language, which made it challenging. But it was like a dream to study at a university, Cambridge, where it's 800 years old, and the architecture reminds you of that.
Absolutely.
History all the time. As far as California to Ohio, I'm still transitioning, I will say. The culture is quite different. The weather's quite different. But I've raised my family here and love this town. I love this university.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right, Beth, how did you end up at ACN? What was the motivation behind joining ACN?
Well, I was lucky enough to know the former assistant director. Shortly after the 2018 election, I was home with small kids and sort of feeling like, what can I do to become involved? Started a group with a neighbor called Ohio 7 together that was sort of a political activism, kind of related to our District 7 as our congressional district. So we were going in to visit our Congress people, doing some writing letter campaigns. But like I said, I knew Kim, who held this role previously, and she knew that she was ready to move on. And she was kind of like, I think this is something you should do. So I applied and it worked out.
I think it would be interesting to have a description of the ACN, because I feel as though some people may not know what exactly your role is as executive and assistant director. So either one of you would like to answer that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'll talk about the center, and we're coming up on our 20th anniversary. And so this center was established around the time of the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. And the idea was that to bring together, and this was before my time here, so it was my predecessor in this role, John Stratton, a faculty member in the English department, who was really passionate about nonviolence and anti-militarism in particular. And so when the U.S. was looking like they were going to invade Iraq, but before that, there were a number of people from the campus and people from the community who were out on the street corner and demonstrating against that invasion. And the U.S. did invade, and at that time, they organized into kind of settling in for a longer term, presence in this community. And so, but from the beginning, I mentioned that because from the beginning, ACN was, it was never meant to be just a university entity. And so it was meant to be like I would say 1 foot on the campus and 1 foot in the community. I mean, maybe have 1.5 foot on campus because we're physically here, but we try to do a lot with community members. We have members of the community on our board, who have no connection with the university. And so, I mean, one of the things that I like there is that here we are, university people, but we're involved in the community, and we're bringing together people who might not otherwise have found each other. So, and then in terms of what we do, a lot of what we do, I'd say, falls under the umbrella of education. Education in nonviolence. We do trainings sometimes for people who are interested in learning about nonviolent conflict resolution, or just getting more educated on history of nonviolence. We do an annual conference that brings scholars and practitioners from various fields. We've been doing that for about 9 years. I think we have our 9th one coming up.
Right.
So in February. So lots of programming. And we also do some service-oriented things. We have a group of students who go and mentor some students at a local elementary school, and that's run out of our office. Began as a conflict resolution training program at that school. It's turned into a mentoring program. So we're always evolving, and our founder, John Stratton, was always just asking, he would say, well, we just do stuff, and I mean, I kind of like that. It's like, what else should we do? Can we do something different? And if something's going on in the world that we have questions about, we don't always have the answers, but, if people are thinking about them, if there's conflict and wars and issues of injustice, we're interested in those. We'll bring in people to help us think those things through. And if there are things to do that we can do hands-on, then we want to get involved and do those things.
Yeah, very good. I want to get to that critical role in a second, but something that not a lot of people know is that John Stratton also helped found the Writing Center in 1987. 1987 with the help of Dr. Lucille Ford.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's right. And he was so I actually teach in the areas of war and some of these things. John didn't, but it was his sort of side passion. He was a Quaker, and if you know anything about Quakers, they're really interested in peace and nonviolence. And so, I mean, this was truly his passion. And he just, he thought this sounded like a good idea, and so he just did it. But yeah, his main area was writing. and taught courses in that.
Yeah, yeah. So both of you have been deeply involved in ACN and nonviolence work. ACN as a disruptor, if you like, as a challenger of status quo thinking. In your views, how do you think, or how important is it to have something like ACN, the heart of an academic campus?
Well, I obviously think it's really important. I think that there's a critical role, but I would think that what we do is kind of equal parts constructive and critical. I don't think I'd be pleased to. I think we'd all run out of energy really fast, and nonviolent movements sometimes do run out of energy and steam if they're constantly fighting, nonviolently battles. The thing that drives us, and I think drives this most successful nonviolent movements like Gandhi's and King's, to use the classic examples, those are driven by a quite constructive vision of what the world can be. And that doesn't always mean that it's going to kind of display itself in terms of challenge. That's something I'm always watching for, but in terms of where we, why is it important that we're on this campus or on a campus? I think colleges and universities, well, lots of them have centers like this. I mean, that's one thing to say, and lots of other kinds of centers. I think when, for one thing, universities benefit when they can channel the energies of the people they have there. And so it's very natural to do what someone like John Stratton did, which is to say, well, we have these people here, and some of these people have this kind of interest, and so then it turns into a center, and then it actually becomes a distinctive thing about the place. And so I differ from John in the sense that I've tried really hard to tap into the Brethren roots of this university, and the Brethren were once upon a time quite known for their. Well, they didn't use the language of nonviolence. They used the language of non-resistance, which comes from the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus taught, do not resist an evildoer. And it's one of the most challenging teachings ever, but they took that so seriously. They said, we stand for non-resistance. And that emphasis is not as prominent in today's Brethren Church, but I like to think that we're, upholding that and staying true to that in a certain respect. I think there are plenty of folks who connect with ACN who don't think in terms of non-resistance specifically. That's quite a high bar. But so I also think of ACN as kind of a big tent. It kind of invites lots of people in who might, maybe they're not pacifists, maybe they're just skeptical of war, or maybe their interest is in interpersonal conflict and resolving conflicts peaceably, on smaller levels. And so I love that that's multidisciplinary. I think that on a college campus, you can connect with people in lots of different fields. We have students who are involved in our programming who are studying lots of different things. So that's another thing I would say. So instead of emphasize, it doesn't just grow out of a single academic discipline. We aren't attached to an academic department, but we bridge many of them, and we invite everyone to be a part.
Very good. So yeah, it is definitely about the intellectual growth and student and faculty engagement. And you mentioned the cross disciplinarity of the center. So it's not just about religion,
sure,
or ethics or faith or
right.
It's open to all. Now, how do you reconcile those ideological differences, if you like, when it comes to student engagement, especially? And we'll talk about the peace scholars in a bit too. But
I think I think because we were set up to be a non-partisan, non-sectarian organization, and we stay true to that. I think, but it doesn't mean that we that we have such generic programming that we're trying to please everyone simultaneously. So I think that would be a mistake. I think we bring in we try to hit lots of different levels. So like, and then there might be something for most people to connect to sometimes. So like we had a student who was really interested in violence against animals, and he helped plan, this was a few years ago, but he helped plan an event that was looking at veganism. He was vegan for a short period of time, it turns out. But I mean, during that time, he helped plan this event, and that was neat. It was like, hey, let's run with this because this absolutely connects. I knew that it wasn't the kind of thing that everyone would be as fired up about as he was. But that's one of, I'll just say a slightly philosophical thing when it comes to violence. I get asked a lot, well, what is violence? As though, and I always kind of, I have a kind of rehearsed thing now that I say when I get asked that, because I think the implication is like, we know what violence is, and all we're doing is putting a non in front of it, which is kind of a negative sign, and we're just saying no to that. But, and I think, so there are two problems. One is, we decided early on, before I was here, we don't spell nonviolence with a hyphen, because we're not simply negating something else. And this is what I was saying about something constructive is driving this. And that was a suggestion that came from Arun Gandhi, who was Mahatma Gandhi's grandson, who spoke here, 15 years ago or something. So that's one thing. And the other is, I really believe we don't truly know what violence is. I mean, we know we can recognize some instances, but what's really frightening about violence is there's all kinds of hidden violences that we don't know. We haven't identified them yet, or some people have and some people haven't. We haven't learned to think of them as violence. We might just think of them as justice or the way things are, or, something like that. And resistance. Yeah. I mean, and there are forms of resistance that are truly violent. And so I always want to kind of hold that open. Like, we don't know the full extent of what violence is. And so we're going to keep educating ourselves. We're going to spiral around lots of different topics and to kind of, to learn more about where violence is hiding. And of course, we're the ones hiding it oftentimes. And so we need to kind of catch ourselves, and we need the help of others. So that would be another way of answering that question about how are we going to address like all of this kind of the disconnects, if there are some, ideologically. It's like, look, we don't really know the full extent of violence. We're looking into it,
That's a nice way of looking at it. So it is open-ended in a way, right?
Yeah.
Which is inviting instead of prescribing to a certain ideological, viewpoint and then adhering to that. So in terms of providing critical analysis of violence on different scales, like, locally, nationally, or internationally, what are some of the key issues that are that ACN is focused on currently?
The big next event that we have is we have the daughter of Desmond Tutu from South Africa, Nobel laureate, coming to campus, Naomi Tutu. She was raised in South Africa, familiar with the apartheid regime and the troubles surrounding the end of the apartheid regime, and then the work of her father, Desmond Tutu, on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, very, very famous, held up as a model of how to approach war after the fact. I don't know if anyway, but that kind of thing. But then she lives in the United States, and so she is she's also well acquainted with the struggles of African Americans. And so she's going to come and bring a kind of multifaceted, multi-layered, set of perspectives for us. So I think for me that kind of person is very, very interesting, because it's if you know about the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, it definitely speaks to societal conflict. But it also has a lot to say about interpersonal conflict. So, so sometimes we can kind of address these things simultaneously.
Right.
We did just recently have a virtual panel on Israel and Palestine. And we were hearing from people, I was hearing from a lot of students that, like, we don't know what to think about this. We just have a lot of questions. We're really concerned and these kinds of things. And so so we planned something with some experts to just to talk, and we had really great feedback from it. Those would be a few things.
Interesting. And you talking about reconciliation. I think from the feedback that I got on that panel, you mentioned the panel on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, if you describe it as such. So how do you go about maybe catering to different needs? You have people who have already subscribed to a certain side, and you have people who have no idea what's going on.
I think maybe as I think about how that panel went, I think we maybe lost some folks who really had no idea. So we don't always kind of start at square one. And I think, and I guess we hope that that's just a lot of work to do,
right?
And to bring everyone up to speed on the like the conflicts with Israel and Palestine. Oh my gosh. So that alone would take a lot of time. And so I guess at the time I was thinking, well, that information's out there. If people want to educate themselves, let them do that. I was interested in what are the live, and that was a month ago. And what people were saying a month ago is different from what people are thinking and saying now. So I just think the value of that event was a snapshot of the current, what are you thinking, the panelists, what are you thinking about now, right now? And so that event wasn't so much geared at like the long history.
Wide range of, in terms of audience.
Yeah, I guess we're not super systematic about always trying to kind of hit those various things. I know that when we do our academic conference, it's meant to be appealing for academics. And so we have academics come and, people can select just like any conference, they select where they go, what sessions they go to. And I think we recognized a need several years ago for some intellectual heft with regard to the topics of peace and nonviolence. We didn't just want to wave flowers around, and like some of that discourse can be quite superficial sometimes. I mean, a lot of it isn't, but I think if it can risk being superficial if we're simply going back to square one all the time.
Right.
So we're trying to kind of start at the middle with the conference at least.
And same thing probably with the keynote speaker, would you say? Would that be appealing to a wide range of...
I think so. So I worry about... So, I don't know, 10 years ago, you could probably assume that everyone had heard about apartheid and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They knew the name Desmond Tutu. I don't think, especially for students nowadays, they don't know that name. I am teaching Exploring Christian Ethics next semester. We'll read Desmond Tutu, and I think we'll read it early in the semester because she's coming in January. But so that can be a bit of a challenge.
For those who are not familiar with the conference, you talked a little bit about the conference, but what could you give us as a preview, especially for the 9th annual conference, for those who have no idea what the conference is about?
Sure. The conference is a really cool event. I think that a lot of feedback after the fact usually addresses that people really appreciate the opportunity to kind of come together, be with people who have similar viewpoints, and then you really learn a lot because it really has that academic spin to it. So we'll have, I believe, 15 presenters coming in this year. So like Craig mentioned, there'll be, you'll choose which room you want to go into, and there's lots of topics that you could learn from. And the open Friday night with a keynote address there too. That's free and open to the public. And then there is registration required to attend the academic conference. But we love having students attend. There are opportunities. There's a written and digital media competition that students can submit to, and that will actually get them free entrance to the conference. And they'll have a chance to share their work. So there's a lot of different things going into it, but it attracts people from a variety of different places. So that's really cool. Last year we had people who presented from Oklahoma that were part of their prison education program there. They came all the way here to Ashland, so it's nice to meet new people and make those connections. And I think it's a fun event every year.
We had someone a different year come all the way from Australia, so it's an international conference. Sometimes it's international. It can be. And so we have different themes every time we do this. And lately we've been choosing a theme that we feel like lots of people can hook into. So this year's theme is Peace Through Peaceful Means. So it's kind of it's meant to tap into an idea in nonviolence scholarship that looks not just at the outcome, but the path to getting there. And so, but in the past, we have had some more specific topics. So we did one on called Understanding Our Gun Culture. So it was quite focused. One time, we did one on sports and violence. And in both of those cases, we produced a book out of the contributions. And so that was really neat, fruitful conference. Yeah, we published some of the papers that got presented. Yeah.
Really cool. You mentioned the mentor program. I don't know what it's called exactly, right? Where some of the Peace Scholars go and teach or work with students.
We have one Peace Scholar who is heading that up. I think I don't know. We have a name. It's the mentoring program.
In the past, it has been called Student to Student.
Oh, it was called that.
Still operates under that.
I thought I saw mentoring somewhere.
Yeah,
in some of the flyers, maybe.
Well, so and that's been going on for some years, and it's quite student led. And so we have a really energetic Peace Scholar this year who did it last year as well. Takes AU students over there, and I don't know that any of the other ones are Peace Scholars, but they're just other students, and it's an after school program at Taft Intermediate School, which is the closest public school to the university, and they work with kids who have been identified by the staff there as kids who would really benefit from having mentors, and just
right.
We think of that kind of a consistent relationship with an older person, and so sometimes they'll sit and do homework, but more often than not, I think they do some kind of craft or games, or they run around and this kind of stuff. But it's beneficial to have an older person in their life.
Yeah, it's also beneficial for Ashland University students. In there,
and we've had students that are going into education, and I mean, I think there are lots of different reasons why this seems fun and seems meaningful to them, to the ones who do it, and we're just really, really pleased when we, that it's just a volunteer thing, and they go over there once a week. We're really pleased.
It's awesome. What about Food for Thought?
So Food for Thought is primarily for our Peace Scholars. That's just a chance for them to have a smaller interaction with a faculty member or someone from the community who has a specific topic that they want to share with the scholars. So we try to do at least a couple of those a year for our scholars. But they can range from, we've had presentations on peace in Costa Rica. We've done one on recently that sort of talked about what was happening in Israel and Palestine for our students.
It's really nice you think about our scholars, and we have 8 of them, I think, to have some one-on-one time with people, especially, it's great to bring in, as Beth said, members of the faculty who have some research that they do.
Right.
And then to kind of have that kind of special time. And we've had leaders in the community come in and talk about, maybe they run a nonprofit or something. And because we've had plenty of students who are interested in social work or some, kind of service path for their career. And so it's helpful for them to see, what people are doing. And
do you guys identify the guest speakers, or do they reach out to you? How does that work?
We typically do identify, or I'll reach out to the Peace Scholars and ask them if they have areas that they're interested in learning more about, and then we'll kind of think about, well, who do we know on campus or in the community who's talking about that or thinking about that, so that we can sort of guide those discussions in that way.
Nice. What about the Social Justice Book Club? There's so many initiatives.
The Social Justice Book Club is really cool because it was really an initiation from a Peace Scholar. It was something that she had wanted to start. So that began, and she's since graduated, but we have 2 current scholars. Josie Brown, who was phenomenal at leading a book club. I will say I've been in a lot of book clubs, and she's very good at it. So we really lucked out that she led that for a year and a half. And yeah, we have 2 students now who have wanted to continue that. So it's still ongoing. And we just select a book a month and try to gather people to talk about it. And those range in all sorts of topics. Sometimes we'll try to tie in to, if there's a, theme within the month, whether it's Hispanic heritage awareness or Native American awareness, we'll try to tap into some of those themes and find books that fit, or just a topic that interests one of the scholars.
Very good. Speaking of scholars, how do you identify scholars? Is that something open to all Ashland University students?
Every spring we accept applications, and so including from incoming freshmen. So we try to get the word out to those who are applying, thinking about coming to Ashland, and maybe this is one of those additional things that makes this seem like a neat place to be. I would say, for the most part, our scholars tend to, maybe they've been here a year and they kind of hear about this, and so anyone listening, you should watch for our application to open up in the spring, and then for the following year.
The beginning of the semester, or
midway through.
Okay.
Yeah.
Probably in March sometime.
Yeah.
So it's open. There's no classification requirement. You don't have to be a freshman or sophomore to apply. It could be.
Well, the earlier on, the better, because one of the requirements is that they take on a minor in ethics or in conflict resolution. So we wanted there to be an academic component to this, but we made it a minor so that it's not too much. But it's just easier to complete those academic requirements if, someone's not joining as a senior or something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking about it, Destiny?
I actually talked to Dr. Hovey about it and joining, but since I decided to double major and have a minor, I've been thinking about it.
We'll definitely look at your application. All right.
Thank you.
You're in trouble now. This question is for Dr. Hovey. In your experience as a professor and scholar in religion, how does faith intersect with the principles of nonviolence, and how do you integrate these principles in your work at ACN?
Yeah.
Or even in your teaching?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I teach classes in Christian theology and Christian ethics, and so my way into an interest in nonviolence, preceded my time at ACN. It's one of my research interests, and one of my core convictions, I suppose, just as a person. But as a Christian and a scholar of Christian topics, I'm mostly interested. I guess I would call them the moral aspects of nonviolence. So there's a long tradition of Christian nonviolence or Christian peacemaking. There's lots of different ways of referring to that. And we think about ways that Gandhi was inspired by the teachings of Jesus, but disappointed by Christians in general not really living that out very well. And then King learning about Jesus' nonviolence partly through Gandhi's interpretation, and so there's a lot there. And I'd mentioned the Brethren historically were non-resistant and would draw on the teachings of Jesus from the Sermon on the Mount. So to me, the depending on who I'm talking to, and if I'm in a class where I'm teaching on Christian ethics, then I will relate themes of nonviolence to Christian teaching and practice, I suppose. But I won't do that for everyone. Depending on who I'm talking to, there are plenty of other reasons to be interested in nonviolence.
Right.
To me, the strongest, most enduring ways of connecting are the ones that really tap into our core convictions. And for people of faith, that's going to be their faith convictions very often. I know that we all have other core convictions as well. And I will say one theme that I've come back to a lot in my scholarship is the meaning, is questions about the crucifixion of Jesus. And I taught a theology seminar for many years on the theology of the atonement. And this also comes up when I teach on capital punishment. I think a lot of students, a lot of people Christians especially, it's never occurred to them that, Jesus was, they understand that Jesus was a victim of capital punishment, but it might not really inform the way they think about capital punishment.
Right.
And so, which is really interesting. And so I have my Taking Human Life class to read an article on human sacrifice and capital punishment. And the author makes a really interesting argument that even modern day death penalty should be thought of as a form of human sacrifice. So I'm really interested in how the language of sacrifice, and I draw for this on a anthropologist named René Girard, who was at Stanford for a long time. He passed away a few years ago, but he writes about sacrifice and scapegoating as basically religious events that give violence a pass because they're religious. And so he was very skeptical of the way that religious people invoke the language of sacrifice. Not every way that it's invoked, but one way it is sometimes invoked is to cover up for what's wrong about bloodshed. And because sacrifice is a way of making it okay.
Interesting.
And this, I'm so interested in this. I could really go on, but it's quite a complicated thing. But what I like about that as a Christian theologian is, the crucifixion of Jesus is really the central event of the Christian faith, arguably. Maybe the resurrection of Jesus should be the central event, but nevertheless, that event, and, it's absolutely central to Christian belief and practice and all kinds of things. And yet I think the violence in it is often overlooked, or we're not sure what to do with it. And we've kind of accepted the language of sacrifice in some uncritical ways that kind of underwrites the violent tendencies. This has been shown quite extensively that historically Christians have appealed to the language of sacrifice and the cross of Jesus in order to justify their violent actions against other people. For lots of really complicated reasons. I'm intrigued that they're theological reasons. In my opinion, they're very bad theological reasons. But the best response to bad theology is good theology, in my view. So I've been working on a better theology. Others have been doing this work too, but it's intrigued me quite a bit.
Interesting, yeah. We'll get to your work as an author as well, right? Just a quick question. What insights do you bring to your teaching, your work with students? This is for both of you. From your time as a student, if you could reflect on that time as an undergraduate student especially, and what are some of the insights that you bring with you to your interactions with students?
Well, my answer is, so I went to a completely different kind of school. I went to UC San Diego, and I studied biology, and so really different areas. Although I really still have an interest in science quite a lot, but it was such a big university. I really didn't know any of my professors ever, and I think lots of people who go to these big universities they may have that same story. You may never know any of your professors, and I truly never knew any of my professors. I'm not sure I ever spoke to any of my professors. So that's amazing. And so it's a negative example. I really regret that. I don't think it occurred to me at the time that there were colleges, smaller colleges, where that would be your experience. And so I've really, I enjoy it so much, interacting with students. It's the best part of the job in my view. And so I play that up as much as possible, and I try to exude the joy that I feel when I'm with students, because, I feel the joy, and I think they should feel it too, my goodness.
The first time I met you, Craig, and I think you were helping Japanese students.
Mm.
And that's someone that we knew, we had in common, but
yeah,
that was the first time we met.
I think I was helping her in a science class, actually. Yeah. Because I had taken that class. So I've taken, this is another thing. It's just like, I love to operate out of joy, when possible. I think we probably all do, right? So there are the things we have to do and the things we want to do. And And so one of the things I decided a few years ago I wanted to do is just take some classes here, undergraduate classes. And I've taken 3 classes. I have enrolled 4 credit. I got a grade. I got A's in all 3 classes, I'm happy to say. But the statistics like took over my life. It was absolutely all consuming, but I really earned that A. But yeah, so I think I was meeting with this student, as I recall, because I'd been through the microbiology.
You're a much better student. I barely got a C+ and stand. So
That's supposed to be me.
are you thinking of taking more classes on campus?
Yes, I just need to figure out how. I think it was a little easier during the COVID period, and then like afterward when we were doing hybrid formats for courses. I had more time. It's really draining for me to be. I mean, I love it, but to be in front of a class for a few hours a day. So I don't feel like I have the energy quite as much with those formats. But we'll see if something opens up. I have specific courses I'd like to take. I think I probably will try to do that.
Very good. What about you, Beth? How many books have you read so far? And I told you I was going to ask you this question. So
This year, I'm probably on track to finish between 120 and 130 books this year.
So wow, that's amazing.
So I usually have an audiobook going, a print book going.
Very cool. So how do you achieve that balance? You're teaching, you're writing, publishing, and also you're a CrossFit.
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, the CrossFit part's the easiest. Well, it's very difficult physically, but I get that out of the way. I worked out at 5:30 this morning, 5:30 to 6:30, and that's before anyone's before my inbox is filling up or anything. I just get that out of the way. So that's easy.
For an hour in the morning.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But then I would say I'm a little out of balance right now in terms of my scholarship and teaching, and then the work with ACN. My scholarship has I haven't been as productive in the last few years. But when I first came to Ashland, I was writing a lot, and I had a really disciplined writing practice. And I would recommend this to everyone, even though I'm not currently doing it, but to have some kind of structured writing practice that you adhere to. And for me, what worked was I would write 500 words every weekday, and even if it wasn't very good, because there was, and often I would have the experience of I'd kind of force myself to say something. I mean, I had projects I was working on, but it wasn't really flowing. We all know that experience. But then, oftentimes by the end of the 500 words, it was flowing, and I think if I hadn't sort of pushed myself into it, I wouldn't have had that experience. And so my first several years here, I was writing a lot. I wrote many books, and I was able to, it's much easier when you have something to start from to edit it down. So I had all this stuff, and it didn't always connect super well or whatever. And then I could spend some time kind of shaping it into a book or an article or whatever it was. So disciplined writing practice. And I know we have a reading and writing community here for, I think it's mostly for faculty, but maybe students are invited. Yeah. AU, RWC. So, and the idea there is to have a quite disciplined practice. So I really recommend that.
Sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to ask if you incorporate any of your works into your teaching or your classes.
I have done that, and I have mixed feelings on this. At first, I thought, I wrote a book called the Exploring Christian Ethics, because I teach a class called Exploring Christian Ethics, and I believe Destiny's been in this. And so, and I wrote it for that class, and I think there's 15 chapters, and there's 15 weeks in a semester, and there's 3 sections in each chapter, and I thought, well, I'll just do Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for each week. But then I got in the classroom and tried to teach it, and I experienced a few things. One was doing it at that pace covers it too fast. So, but then the more interesting thing is that I found that students were reluctant to, they didn't really like reading their professor's book. And I'm still figuring this out. Maybe you can talk about it. Maybe you can share with the audience. Was it weird for you?
I'm not going to lie. I was picking up my books, and I was like, a book for the class written by the professor. Yeah, this guy has
That's a great idea, right?
narcissist.
Oh, come on.
But you proved me wrong, and I actually really enjoyed it. That's why I wanted to become a religion major, is because of taking that class and the discussion style of diving into the book. Again, I think they could have used a little bit more explanation on some of the chapters because, you can't cover everything. But I thought it was really interesting to see professors actually involved, especially at Ashland, caring about what they're teaching, actually diving in.
So I am redesigning that course. I appreciate, and based on that kind of feedback, I am redesigning the course completely for next semester. I think I'm going to keep using the book for maybe online versions of it. I'm not sure. But that kind of dynamic of discussing the professor's work with the professor, I think it's too much of a barrier.
I was going to say that I think that's very common in so many institutions where faculty members
I thought so.
their own work.
Sure.
And being a freshman class as well, I feel like a lot of students were scared to speak up and offend the Dr. Hovey. But, we had the few standout students who were not afraid to.
Yeah.
I mean, it's supposed to be a discussion, intellectual discussion where people can voice their views, and
it can be.
I will say the opposite, maybe the other direction has worked for me is better, perhaps. So this atonement upper level religion seminar that I taught for many years, it's generated a lot of interest and ideas for me that have turned into publications for me. And so, and I've benefited so much from deep conversations with students that as a scholar, I walk away from class sometimes thinking, gosh, I'd like to look into this more, and then that'll turn into a research project.
Yeah. So in the era of ChatGPT and AI, how do you navigate that, especially in your work with students, and they know that you assign writings?
Yeah. Well, so that's the main answer is I'm doing more in-class writing. I think, and I think all of us are, kind of wondering what the future holds, maybe period, but I think the skills of writing, I'll say, so I'm doing in-class writing and students are handwriting. And so I'm reading penmanship, which I hadn't done in a long time. And I'm enjoying, there's sort of things that I'm enjoying about it I didn't expect. So I'm enjoying the kind of tactile experience of picking up a student's paper that they worked on. And I've made some really nice watermarked lined paper, so it's meant to be pleasurable for all of us. I'm enjoying how the writing style, the penmanship actually is conveying their personality. That's just kind of a minor thing. But then also it's made me realize that we've relied so much in the past on, go off and write this essay and then turn it in, which, is a skill and assesses certain things, that there's certain other things that we haven't been trying to emphasize as skills or trying to assess. So I don't see it as an exact substitute for going off and writing an essay, especially a research paper. But there are pluses that I'm seeing.
And it's work in progress too. So
yeah. So we in religion, I know we said, well, we're gonna just try various things this semester and see how it goes, and then regroup and maybe try something different next semester. I don't know. Which is really the spirit of AI anyway, right? Which is it's evolving. But I guess also I will say that on the, not to be too doomsday, but if it's this is the word intelligence is being used. And anytime we're using AI, we're not depending on our own intelligence. And, here we are at college we're in intellectual pursuits. And so one way or another, we're just getting out of doing intellectual work when we use AI. And, whether it's writing your whole paper or, looking for ideas or using spell check. Well, that's the other thing. In-class writing, I'm realizing students can't spell. Oh my gosh, they can't spell. But I didn't know that because we were all using spell check for a long time.
It does it for you automatically. So
I know. So as you see how lazy we've become. So.
Or phone numbers in your phone, stored in your phone. How many of those do you remember?
Yeah, we need to get back to the skill of memorizing phone numbers. That would be good. Thankfully, I don't teach that class, so I don't have to worry about that.
Interesting. What advice do you have? Final advice for, this is for both of you, Beth and Craig, who are interested in pursuing maybe a degree in theology or interested in, peacemaking or joining ACN.
Mm-hmm.
Come to our events, apply to be a Peace Scholar. Those are two great ways to get involved.
Yeah, and and I think one of the reasons why those are great ways is that there was a I don't know if people know the movie Sister Act, but this is from the early '90s, maybe, I don't know, but there was a line that my colleague Dr. Slade quotes a lot in there, which is that God's placed you here. Take the hint, and I think you're in college. This is your chance to take lots of classes, go to lots of, be involved in lots of student groups, go to lots of events on campus. And especially interesting are the things that are outside your main area. I mentioned I've taken microbiology and statistics and whatever at this university. I love that. To me, being, the life of the mind is an expansive one. And so, if we can, I guess I'm the kind of person, I find everything interesting. I came across a student who was like, oh, it's just a core, whatever it was, complaining it's just a core class, so it doesn't interest me. I'm like, what? The problem is you should be interested in everything. Why aren't you interested in that? Everything's interesting. So I guess I would just say, have your main thing, but that's just your major, right? There's lots of other things. And I know we have students who are very engaged in things, but to kind of intentionally understand those other things as part of your intellectual development, that's a really, really, really neat thing. And then that way you're going to set yourself up to be a lifelong learner, to experience the joy of learning in all kinds of contexts, not just classroom contexts. And maybe the classroom context is the least exciting time. I mean, the other times you're learning too, right? So that's the kind of advice I would give, and just to take full advantage of all of the opportunities that are here. And I suppose we have a kind of new slogan we're trying out at the religion department, which is do not be afraid. Don't be afraid of anything. If there are ideas that are seem new to you or foreign to you or weird or whatever, don't be afraid of them, which is not to say believe them, but, take it all in, read books that aren't, study up on the other side. If you're on one side of something, learn the other side, Explore. Absolutely. Yeah, that's education.
Very good piece of advice. Any final thoughts, Destiny?
Well, I think it's very great advice. I'm not a religion major because I want to do something with religion. I am a religion major because I find it interesting and I want to learn about new things.
Good.
Great advice.
We need more destinies.
Yeah, more destinies in our lives. Yeah, and the conference, February 23rd, 24th?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Right. It's Friday, Saturday. Awesome. And you can
register open. Yep.
Register online.
Our website, our AU website, and there's a link there to register.
There's a special student rate, which is quite low.
Okay.
And if that's a barrier, come and talk to us. Probably help you out.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time and your dedication and just your commitment when you talk about teaching and interacting with students. That joy, we can sense that, and it's contagious. And thank you so much. Appreciate your time. Thank you, Beth.
Thank you guys so much for coming. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. You too. All right. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Whoa.